How's it going, YouTube? Coming in today with another video, and today, guys, the video is going to be avoiding Burnout. Now, Burnout is really ironic, this format, because it's fire format, you know, and Burnout. But I think that it's a really serious problem that we need to talk about, because especially in a format like this, where a lot of people are priced out of the game because the best deck is just $1,000. It's never really ideal, right? And we always have like the jokes from like Pokemon or what have you, because everything's like $30 for a deck that won Worlds, right? Which is crazy. Or you can just play the VGC for essentially free, right? So like, it's definitely unfortunate to see where the game's at the moment. I don't love that, but at the same time, it's a really good opportunity in a format like this to kind of just explore different strategies and just kind of take chances. And we'll talk about what that looks like. If you haven't checked my sponsors over on Imperium, Dragonshield, Gem, Cloud, Riw Hobbies and Games, Grimoire, or ChainLink, definitely go ahead and check them all out down below in the description. And without further ado, let's hop right into that first slide. The first deck that I want to talk about today is going to be Cash. Now, I brought Cash to the Niagara Falls Regional, and I had a lot of fun with it. It was a really good time. I did lose to Flunder, and it was unfortunate. But this is one of those things where I kind of got in the headset where I was like, I hate Shifter so much, I'm just going to play the card so I don't lose to it at the event, you know, so that's always fun. And I don't really like formats like that either, because then you get into this weird situation where you're like, well, I'm playing the card because if I don't play the deck that can beat the card, then I lose to the card. Even though Snake Eye has a line through it, there's just so many different options right now that just auto-lose to cards like Shifter, and it's really frustrating. I could have played Fire and just kept borrowing the deck, but I really took this as an opportunity to just explore other decks that I really wanted to play during a format, because typically when I play the game, I play one deck for like 4 formats, right? Like whatever the best deck is, I just hold on to it and keep playing it. So I never really have the opportunity to like branch out and try out a bunch of different decks, which we'll talk about in the next 2 slides, because I've already played Cash before, but like it's still a solid option if you don't want to play like the best deck in the game, right? This is still like a really solid contender, especially with like the Heat Soul line and whatnot. It's pretty nice. You still play some Floodgates on the side, you have Shifter, so it's a pretty safe pick overall, which I don't mind. I did top 2 regionals, top 4 with Tier Limit, and that would have been really fun to bring to this event even this past weekend, but at the same time, the deck's just not what it was, right? Like, we need something back to be able to make the deck a little bit better, and there was the one top in Guadalajara, but at the same point, like, it's just not where I wanted it to be. So I really took this as an opportunity just to try things that are new. And I didn't really do that well at any of these regionals, but I did take a lot away from them because I did play VV as well. VV is a deck that I openly do not like. I think the deck is very bad. It has gotten a few tops, which is fine, and it has been competitive toward Fire, but I just really personally don't like decks that only do one thing. If a deck only does one thing and it's very linear, I cannot stand it. It's just not something that I ever want to do. So that's something for me, at least, that I found out that I really just don't like playing decks like this. And that's really important for me because at least I know that, right? So like going into a future format where I took some time to just kind of like sit in the background and just play other decks and not really perform that well, it was important for me because at that point I can still at least do something in the game that is productive in a time where I'm not really going that hard at events, right? And even at Detroit, I just picked up my very first Edison deck. I went to a vendor and I traded in a couple cards, and the vendor was able to piece together an entire Vayu Turbo deck for me. So that was very cool. I was able to play some side events for Edison and just kind of enjoy the game. And this is where the whole conversation of Burnout comes in. It's like, if you're not enjoying yourself and the game just isn't fun, just don't put pressure on yourself that format. Just enjoy Yu-Gi-Oh! For what it is. Just have a good time, right? And that's one thing where it's like, my head was just empty going to these events. Like, I took a deck that I've never really played before, brought the deck, just kind of explored different lines, and this will help me in the future if there's a deck very similar to it, right? Where I can at least play that deck and be like, oh, this kind of plays exactly like this deck. And it gives you a little bit more versatility in your playstyle in the future. Which is really cool. And then also in a format like this, if the format's just not fun, play some really weird side cards you never really get to play. Play your Gravekeeper Inscription, play your Ultimate Slayers, just kind of see what they do and your options with them, or see if you can find like a really cool interaction, right? And that's where we see, even at Detroit, second place was Blackwing. Like, we saw Chainburn in Philadelphia. Runic Stun is everywhere right now. Like, people just don't care right now because the format is just bad. And I think that's one thing where people go to the events and they're like, I have to get top 8. But like, if the format isn't for you, just find something fun to do, right? Like, at the end of the day, we all played Yu-Gi-Oh because it's fun, and we all want to be competitive, we all want to do well, but sometimes your format just isn't in front of you. Maybe it's next format. Like, for me, I always wait for whenever I'm in the forefront of a deck that just released. So, like, for example, I didn't have the best deck in the game until Tier came out, and I bought Tier immediately, right? And then I played Tier forever. I didn't buy into Fire fast enough, and I wasn't going to buy into Fire late, so I'm just going to wait for the next best deck, and then buy into that deck immediately, and then play that deck for like 4 formats. So I took the time to really just have some fun with decks like VV, and I just played Lab at the last event, and I did awful. This deck is not for me. It's very technical, and that's fine. And I did get inscriptioned on my graveyard when there was like 5 things I could have activated that turn, and it was real unfortunate. It was what it was, right? The deck was an interesting time. I was able to do a couple really cool things with the deck. I got to use some of the Unchained cards. But at the same time, like, this is a deck that I would never play. In my life, I would never play this. There's way too many trap cards in a deck list for me. So that's one thing where, like, it was fun for what it was. And then I played some Edison. So right now, hopefully we get a ban list this Monday, which is the 8th. That's really what I'm hoping for, since Raleigh is in 2 weeks and that gives us plenty of time to prepare. But in this moment in time, I think that it's really important just to kind of reflect on what got you into Yu-Gi-Oh, right? So, like, for me, I'm gonna run past that one for a second. Chainburn is the first deck that I ever brought to a regional because I couldn't afford anything, and I threw $50 at Chainburn and just put this together, which was pretty funny, honestly. I didn't really do that well, but someone definitely almost flipped the table over when I hit them for 9,000 damage, right? So seeing a couple cards in here is just like hilarious to me, right? Like, this is so funny. So this is something that kind of like rejoices my fun back into the game, where I was just kind of like really stressing out and doing well at events. I can actually like sit back and just have fun with Yu-Gi-Oh! The other thing too, shout out for Ready for Duel too, for always having the deck list on Twitter, which is really exciting too, because you can kind of just see them and move about your day, but some that you can actually just save immediately, and this is one that really caught my eye. Look how interesting this is. Like, Infernoids are one of those decks that I think really hurt from not having Gamma to 3, because, like, if your imagination gets stopped, you're in a really rough spot. But could you imagine you sit down and your opponent goes Ash into Poplar, get original send Poplar, summon Decatron? Like, that's insane. You know, it's just one of those things where you can do that. And, you know, it's really cool, and the deck list did top. So this is really a time for you to just kind of explore the game if you're not having a good time. Because the more you know, and the more you can learn about the game and your interactions that'll come up, I think that you'll even be able to benefit more from taking a small break, because you'll come back to the game with a lot more fresh eyes, especially for deck building, because you'll see a lot of different things that you can do. That's when I played the 60 card striker list, and then I was like, I'll never play 60 cards, and then I top 8 at a regional with it, right? Which was crazy. So I think that there's always a way that you can kind of tech out the format, because look at it objectively, right? There's so many decks and so many cards out there that literally nobody played, and then somebody was like, this is pretty good, and they brought it to an event and did well. So, like, you could do the same thing. If you were ever in the lab and you are just like, I cannot figure it out, just know there's something out there that you can do that's really going to catch people off guard, and it's going to be really fun. But that's just my take on Burnout. I think that it's really important to have these conversations, because, like, we all understand there's certain formats that are literally just not for us. We're just not having a good time, and that's perfectly okay. But don't take it as a moment to just be like, this game is awful. Take it as a moment to be like, all right, let's see what else we can do with the game. Maybe you do play some Edison. Maybe you do play some Astro Duel and just kind of vibe it out for a little bit. But everyone has their formats, and everyone has formats that aren't for them. So just kind of take that in consideration the next time that you're like, you know what? I don't like the game right now. And taking a break is good too. Sometimes you just need the break from the game. You just walk away for a little while. But if it's just like a matter of the deck in the game that you don't like, just play other things. Like, even if it's not like the craziest thing, we've seen crazier things top, right? So if you haven't already checked out my Discord, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, or my Medify page, definitely go ahead and check it all out down below in the description. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Thank you all so much.